So I'd like to welcome everyone to the March 6, 2025 Select Board meeting. And our first, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And our first action is to take action on the minutes of January 16th and February 6th. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, those are passed. So the next is it's called opt-in specialized stretch code presentation.
Oh, the fire station.
Not on mine.
No, for whatever reason, there was a public, actual agenda that got posted was missing that piece.
Do I have to go with this
So
one?
we have to go with what was posted.
Okay.
So we're gonna have
It's
to
fine.
do the
I'm
appointment.
just glad to see that Bruce is stepping up. He's tremendously qualified.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Oh, yeah, that's not an issue, just.
We're
Yeah,
just
no,
gonna do it on the next agenda.
Let's do it on the agenda. A mistake was made.
So Michael, so we're live right now, right?
Yes.
Is there any way that we can get input from one of your participants?
Yeah, they'll be able to raise their hand or,
Okay, so I'm going to introduce right now Mike Rossi. He's with, he's one of the, works for the DOER as a code specialist, a code trainer. So as we're going to be talking about specialized code, Mike's there to fill in any gaps that I've missed and to answer questions that I might not be able to answer.
Okay.
Yeah,
so-
thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Good.
So I'm gonna
You
introduce,
might want to even
Yes, I
somewhere
do.
else.
so I'd like to,
Somewhere else.
if I could finish introducing.
Yes.
So this is the stretch code presentation as part of the Climate Leader Program with the state. The presentation will be by Chris Mason from DOER. And thank you for coming tonight, and then you can begin your presentation.
Okay, great. Okay, so go ahead, Mike, do next slide. So I'm going to start off with a little policy background, and I'm going to give a real quick overview of the Climate Leader Communities Program, which is why you guys are considering this specialized stretch code. And then I'll go into the specialized stretch code. Next slide. Oh, next slide. Waste slide there. Okay, just real briefly, back in 2008, when the state passed the Global Warming Solutions Act, that's what established the Green Communities Program and the grant funds and stuff that flow through the Green Communities Program. And at that time, it was really based on most cost-effective energy efficiency. Basically, how do we avoid the cost of building a new power plant? And then in 2021, the net zero, what was the name of the act? It was the Climate Act, right? The Climate Act of 2021. The state legislation changed the goalposts a little bit to a net zero emissions by 2050. And what the difference is, instead of trying to do energy efficiency for the sake of energy efficiency and cost effectiveness, it's now greenhouse gas reduction. So they're really trying to, get rid of greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And so that's kind of what the Climate Leader Communities is around. What Green Communities Program was around energy efficiency, building up the efficiency of buildings. Climate Leader Communities is actually moving it a little bit farther, actually trying to do carbon reduction. Next slide. All right, so kind of broadly, the way to get there, electrify your buildings. This building used to be electrified because of the geothermal system. Electrify your vehicles. And then when you're using electricity, you then get to kind of ride on the coattails of the state because they are cleaning up the electric grid. So as the electric grid gets more and more carbon free, your actual use of heat and driving and stuff gets more and more carbon free without having to do anything new. And then there's a little bit of carbon sequestration for the state's plan because they can't get to everything through that mechanism. Next slide. Real quickly, as an example, using for a heating system, those three columns on the left-hand side are fossil fuels. The most efficient fossil fuel is natural gas. And what the numbers on the bottom are showing is the amount of pollutant that would happen, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that would come out of delivering 1 unit of heat. In this case, 1 MMBTU of heat. So if each one of those inputs are providing 1 unit of heat how much greenhouse gas emissions you would have comes from it, are those numbers on the bottom. So if you compare it to electric resistance heat, that's even worse. But if you look at the cold climate heat pump compared to natural gas, the most efficient fossil fuel that we have, even today, you're producing 45% less carbon emissions if you're going with a heat pump, an air source heat pump. If you go to a ground source.
But that's not saying how they're making electric.
I'm sorry, say again?
That's not saying how they're making electricity.
Yes, that's taking into account how we're making electricity in the state of Massachusetts right now. So that's basically today. If you put an air source heat pump into your house, compared to burning a high efficiency natural gas boiler or something like that, you would be producing about 45% less carbon emissions.
And what's the cost of the electric?
This isn't taking into account cost, but we can get to that towards the very end.
Okay, because
Yep.
I know it really pushes up the electric bill.
Yeah,
Great.
yes, but it also gets rid of the natural gas bill. So there's a trade-off there. It's, your overall bill. And it provides you with air conditioning.
And how are heat pumps getting to the point where I read on these really cold days, and I don't know, it's just Facebook or something, but people with heat pumps sometimes seem to not get the productivity they need to keep their house warm.
That's a combination of both the heat pump technology and the building you're putting it in. If you put in a natural gas boiler in a really old leaky house, it might have a hard time keeping up. Same thing with a heat pump. You put a heat pump into a really leaky house, it's going to have a hard time keeping up.
But even
So I do.
houses, the colder it gets, the less they're efficient.
Yes, this is true.
And that's when you need the heat, when it gets colder.
Oh, they still deliver the heat,
Yeah,
just not as efficiently.
yeah.
And do keep in mind through the presentation here, because we're talking about the specialized code, we're only talking about new houses. So when I talk about putting a heat pump in an old house versus putting it into a new house, built to the stretch code right now, these new houses are so comfortable, no drafts. They take if you have a power outage, the building will maintain its temperature for days. So it's really completely different to talk about a heat pump in a new house compared to a heat pump in an old house. And we're talking here, the specialized code, this has to do with new construction only. Yep. Okay, so next slide. So if we now go to 2050, and the state has succeeded in driving down the greenhouse gas emissions, if they've met their goal for electric production, then same situation, you are now producing 85% less carbon emissions because your source of power, the electricity coming into the house has gotten greener and greener, and you, without doing anything else, have been getting greener yourself. So that's kind of an example of their strategy towards getting.
So when you say green and greener, that means hundreds of acres of solar panels and windmills and coming out here and putting
That'll
in
be,
our open spaces, and because how else are you going to make all electricity unless they start just
they're working on it.
adding multiple, just putting all the stuff all over our beautiful countryside here.
I think that's going to, that's a different topic.
Well,
I hear what you're saying.
I think it's all tied together because you're saying they're producing enough electricity to get to that number.
Right.
But they're not telling us how they're going to produce the electricity.
I know wind turbines.
Because I know they're coming out here.
Offshore wind is a big piece of what they're aiming for right now.
Wind is kind of not, I'm hearing wind is not that effective.
Okay.
And I hear they're saying that they want to take all our open land out here and just load them up with solar panels to feed Boston. I'm just saying what I'm hearing. And
I hear you. I hear you.
I think it's all tied together. How do you produce all this electricity to be green without destroying a lot of your
You do need, whether it's going to be bringing in hydropower from Quebec or whether it's wind turbines off the coast.
It kills the whales. I'm just saying everything has a
Granted,
side effect.
I would totally granted. Yes, absolutely.
Maybe more than seagulls. I don't know.
I'm just,
You don't get free energy. There's going to be some impact And so that is a decision you'll have to make. Because not doing anything is causing massive changes as well. But I prefer not to get sidetracked on that. If I'm trying to.
I'm sorry, but I think it's all connected, so.
I don't disagree with you. Next slide, Mike. So the climate leader community. Just real briefly, just go over this. You must be an existing green community in good standing. Stockbridge is. You must establish and maintain a local committee to advise, select board, et cetera, and you do have one. You make a commitment to municipal decarbonization by 2050. In other words, taking municipal operations and by 2050, having them meet a carbon, getting close to a carbon neutral goal. You need to formulate a roadmap for implementation. And what that is really, it takes a bit to move buildings towards being green. You don't necessarily just swap out the heating system because, then you might end up with a good, highly efficient heating system in a very inefficient building, and it doesn't quite work. So over the next decades, between now and 2050, the roadmap would be a kind of a living document that kind of maps out how are you going to move your buildings and your transportation of your municipal operations. Are you going to move them forward? So that's a piece of becoming a green climate leader community.
And what's the deadline for that?
There isn't really a deadline. I mean, there is a deadline for the first application, which is this June. But you don't have to.
So Chris, we already got the grant, we've already got the roadmap mostly completed. We're just finalizing it. So to be honest,
Oh, we do?
the first four,
Okay.
Stockbridge is already completed.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just say at our town meeting last May, the citizens
at
voted
the town
to
meeting.
make that commitment.
I
Yeah,
can't.
On a green committee.
but I haven't seen any of them.
Yeah, that was done by the Green Committee, and Chuck, once we finalize it,
Okay.
it'll come to the select board. It's in its, 99%? I know last week Monday I sent it back to Laura. We had a couple tweaks and it'll be coming to the select board. So, and it was all paid for by a grant. So like I said, we're 90% done with the roadmap and we got the other 3 completed because this board did approve the zero emission vehicle policy.
Great.
We do.
Okay, so for the sake of time, then we should move on.
Let's do that.
Okay. The carrot, which I guess you guys probably have heard already, but when climate leader communities then apply for technical assistance up to $150,000 to do in-depth studies, engineering that's needed in order to implement the types of things in the second box down. So capital funding, the accelerator grant of up to $1 million to decarbonize your infrastructure.
So if after we vote today, do we get the check?
No. You vote today, you come up with some plans, and you apply like you do for anything else for a check, right?
We take Bitcoin.
So is this for municipal buildings or,
Yes.
okay,
I should say municipal operations.
thank you.
It could also be used towards vehicles.
Okay.
Right. Okay, next slide. So now we'll get to the specialized energy code. Right now, there's 3 codes in Massachusetts: a base code, a stretch code, and then the specialized code. 48 municipalities so far have adopted the specialized code, and there's only 50 that are still in the base code. Most of them are on the stretch code. Next slide, which is what Stockbridge is right now. So
We're in the middle one, right?
yes, you're in the middle one right now, right?
So we're the green.
You are a light blue on this
Blue?
map.
Oh.
So the stretch code communities are light blue. Pretty much most of Massachusetts are under the stretch code. The white ones are the ones that are still on the base code. And the dark blue ones are the ones that have adopted the specialized code. So that's out west.
Wait, can you go back there for a second?
Yep.
What color is Northampton? Some for us colorblind people.
The darker blue,
The darker
No,
blue.
but what does that mean?
specialized code.
Oh, specialized.
Right.
Okay.
So Northampton, East Hampton.
It makes sense, of course.
I'm a little ahead
Now
of,
that I ask it.
but they're bigger.
Amherst, Pelham, Ashfield,
Mhm.
Northampton, and East Hampton in the western area have adopted the specialized code.
Towns that are really building.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom.
Okay, next slide.
It is financially.
Is everybody here familiar what a HERS rating is?
No.
Okay, so Home Energy Rating System. I'm only mentioning this because you're going to need to know a little bit about what these numbers mean. It's a way of, today's building codes use the HERS system often. And what you do is you come up with a model of the building that you're going to build. And they could say how much energy it's going to take to heat and cool the building. And just basically making sure you're building a building that can actually get there. Then as the construction happens, then the building is tested at certain times to make sure you actually are reaching the goals that you aimed for. So, before you put the sheetrock up, you want to look at your insulation, you want to check your air sealing, that kind of thing. And then when the building is finished, they actually take some measurements with a blower door test, a few other things, and they actually test to see whether they got there. And then the building gets a HERS rating, which gets passed on to the local building official. So the lower the HERS, next slide, actually, the lower the HERS number, the tighter the building it is.
And does the building inspector do this? The HERS? No.
No, the HERS rating is done by HERS inspectors
Oh, okay.
or HERS raters.
Okay.
And they are monitored and overseen by ResNet. So an organization which actually goes out and tests them, they make sure they're doing it honestly.
Okay.
Can private property owners request a HERS test from
Yeah,
someone?
you could pay a HERS rater.
Okay.
Mike?
Yep.
Mike Rossi, who's joining us.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So private property owners can do it, a HERS rating. A HERS rating can actually be done on any size house, but typically it is only done for new construction or for renovations and additions. Like you're not going to get it done. Most people wouldn't choose to get a HERS rating unless they need it because HERS is tied to code compliance.
Yeah, no, I'm just involved in a significant. Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Okay. So this is giving you a snapshot over time as the blue bars, the stretch code, have gotten tighter and tighter. This doesn't quite show them. The base code generally didn't follow that, right on top of it, but the base code has basically followed the stretch code over the years. As the stretch code got tighter, the base code later on got tighter. You could see in 2023 and 2024 that the green bars, that's the specialized code, that got tighter first, but then the stretch code has already caught up to it. And the base code probably is going to get a little bit tighter again coming up soon. So the HERS rating of, existing homes are probably about a HERS of about 140. Your spec house, they say, is about a HERS of about 100. The mass average in 2020 and 2021 had a HERS rating of about 51. If you have a HERS rating of 0, that means you are producing as much energy on property as you are using. So speaking, towards, where you get your renewable energy, it might be just a solar array on your roof.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, next slide. All right, here we're going to get into just what you're voting on. What is the difference when you talk about a specialized code compared to what you currently have, which is a stretch code? I'm going to go this row by row. On the very top row, if you have an all-electric new home, so it has no combustion inside at all, then you need to meet, the stretch code says you need to meet a HERS 45 or this other pathway called a passive house. The specialized code, if you adopt it, it won't change it. If you're building an all-electric house, the specialized code doesn't touch it. If you're building a house, one of what we call mixed fuel homes, it has some kind of combustion inside. It might be a gas stove, might be a gas dryer, any kind of combustion in-house is called a mixed fuel home. And then depending on the size of the building, you need to get a HERS 42. And then depending on the size of the building, you need to add a certain amount of solar and you need to wire for electrification. And what I mean by that is that if you put in, say, a gas dryer, you need to, when you're building the house, you need to run the electric lines to that gas dryer so that if someone wants to replace it in the future with an electric dryer, they can. And it might be like a heat pump dryer, high efficiency heat pump dryer. So it's basically taking the added cost of decarbonizing that building And it takes the costs that are really easy and cheaper to do right up front and makes you do it up front. And then it says you have to put on a certain amount of PV, solar on the house. If you're talking about a larger house, 4,000 square feet and over, then the solar PV needs to be sized to make the building net zero. So the solar array needs to be sized to cover the total load of your house over the course of a year. So wiring for electrification and solar additions. I'll add, and the next slide will show it in more detail, but don't go to it quite yet. When you build these houses, if you're building them in the middle of the woods, they're not going to make you tear down you're not going to have to cut down trees. If you're building a house and it simply does not have a surface that aims towards the sun, none of your roofs aim in the right direction, then they're not going to ask you to do this. So there's exemptions to the solar requirement. Just as I mentioned before, the specialized stretch code has only to do with new construction. When we get to home additions and alterations, you can see there's nothing under the specialized code. There's no green on that bar. So the specialized code doesn't affect it if there's home additions and alterations.
I just want to add one thing. In Stockbridge last year, we had 5 houses that were new construction. And of those 5, 2 of them, or 40%, were already electric. So we're not, for our town, which has pretty limited new construction, this is not a huge thing.
Right.
Again, it's only new construction.
Okay.
And I'll point out also that, we'll get to some examples later on. If the cheapest way to build a house nowadays with the construction, the types of HVAC systems you need to put in, and the subsidies that are out there, mass save subsidies, federal subsidies that are out there. All electric is the cheapest way to build. So if you have anybody in town who's really trying to, trying to reach to build that house under your current code, if they can do it, because that all electric is going to be the cheapest way to do it, then the specialized stretch code won't affect them. It won't add any more burden to them.
And so why is the last line on there if this is only new construction and home additions and alterations are on the second to last line? What's the purpose of historic or existing homes?
Yes, okay, so also, the specialized code doesn't change anything with historic or existing homes either.
I said if it would damage the historic fabric. I mean, if this is only new construction, I just don't understand the applicability.
So that's a good point. That could be kind of confusing to put that in there, because we are talking about only new construction.
Yeah.
It comes from just some other conversations around what the stretch code does.
So you're saying
Oh,
building a new home doesn't cost any more by putting solar panels, all electric stuff, all the extra wiring, all that is same expense as building a regular house?
Nope. Let's all clarify.
Because that's what
If it's an all electric home, so that top row up there, an all electric home.
yeah.
So what's required under the stretch code, HERS 45 or a passive house, that's the same under the specialized code. So there's no change. You're going to build the exact same house. If it's all electric, you're going to build the exact same house under the stretch code as you do under the specialized code. There's no difference. If you have mixed fuel, that's when the pre-wiring and the solar come into effect. And then that will raise the cost.
So
And I can show you.
you're going all electric, you don't need solar panels?
No, exactly.
But if you go mixed, you need solar panels.
Yes.
So
If-
not
if-
liking
That
range.
doesn't make any sense. Why would you have solar panels if you got electric? I mean, it just, to me, it doesn't make sense why you got mixed use.
Because you're making up for the fact that you're burning stuff. I mean, I think that's the
oh, I
rationale.
see.
Yeah, that is kind of.
Yeah.
Is there a tax benefit or is there incentives for people to make all electric?
There are. Let's go to a few
Now.
more slides.
Can we use charcoal in our barbecue grills?
Until,
Yes, you can. Think about inside the building envelope.
You can't have
You
a
can
wet
put out your
grill, or-
enormous,
I'm a big
huge
fan of
gas grill outside, no problem, won't touch it. Okay, this just shows a little bit about when you would have to have solar. So it's showing with mixed fuel, you need to have a suitable solar roof zone of greater than 300 square feet. and the right orientation, which is basically, I've already mentioned this. And if it's all electric, no PV required, just solar-ready roofs, which is under the regular stretch code.
It's
Okay,
required though, so people are gonna have to, you know,
if they want to have gas, some kind of combustion inside their house,
right.
then they. But they
Are
don't
there
have to.
any times where people find it necessary to have combustion? Are there any instances where that is kind of something that people have to have?
Well, if you want, what about a fireplace? Is that considered?
Yep, that would make you mix fuel. Yep, and yet that's the one place where you don't have to pre-wire, because you're not going to pre-wire to.
So you're saying if someone puts a fireplace in, they would have to have solar?
Yes.
So the backup heat, because it costs you more.
No, but forget the cost. If somebody just wants a little wood burning, this is the Berkshires.
Yeah.
Somebody wants a fireplace, then
For
is
aesthetic.
that, I mean, the solar's gonna add what, 10, 20, 30 grand to the house costs?
Oh, that.
We'll get to some of the prices later on.
So
But-
if you got an all-electric house, you don't have to have solar panels,
Yep.
and you have no backup heat. So the first winter storm and the electric goes out, you're done.
Keep in mind, the building that you're building is going to maintain its temperature with no power for days.
Open your garage door, open your house door and walk in.
Well, don't leave the door open.
I mean, it's just,
These-
I can't wrap my head around, how can a 100% electric house have no solar, but you're making a mixed fuel use solar that has a backup in case you lose power, but an electric house has no backup.
Oh, it might be better.
Chris, in the example that Chuck is talking about here, you could have a gas-fired generator outside the house, correct?
You could.
With an all-electric house, you could have a.
And a Weber grill.
Yep, and that would be outside the envelope, correct?
Yep, be a pretty big generator. Yes,
And burning,
but yes, you could. Yes.
so there goes the zero emissions.
I'd like to, I mean, look at, I support this, but this question of, when I go around my yard after a storm and pick up dead branches from a tree that just came down that would rot and release its carbon within a year, and I put it in my fireplace, I can't imagine that we're treating stuff that we pumped out of the ground, oil and gas, the same as a piece of wood I might burn in my fireplace. And my practical question is this: if we were to adopt this and someone then wanted to put in, let's say, a wood burning stove, does this, if for an existing house, does this allow us?
This is new construction.
This is only new
Only
construction.
new construction.
So
So
we're basically telling people though that in new construction, unless they want to put in solar, they can't have a fireplace or a wood burning stove.
No, you can. You just,
With a solar panel.
yeah, right.
I'm saying if they don't want to do solar, that was the first part of my sentence.
Oh, I see.
All electric house, but they want to have the cool little kind of,
Right,
that seems,
right. Is the choice they would have to make. Is it worth it for?
but the regular stretch code doesn't
This is-
include that choice.
The regular stretch code does not have the requirement for solar. Right.
And just to make sure that I understand this has nothing to do with existing homes.
Right.
If someone wanted to, after the fact, put in a wood burning stove.
This is true.
And does that mean that even after the construction date of today?
Mike, you hear this question? Can you weigh in?
Yeah, so I think it's something where after someone owns a home, I mean, you can do whatever you want to it. So the requirement for the stretch code and the specialized code are only for between the building permit and the final certificate of occupancy. So, I mean, if the project that you're going to do after the fact requires a permit, then it would be subject to the requirements there. But for the purpose of building a home, it's just between building permit and certificate of occupancy for the new project.
doesn't make any so if I build a total electric home. After I get my OC permit, I can go in and put a gas unit, a wood stove, anything?
I can't give you advice.
Or is there something written in there that it has to maintain?
No, what Mike just said is that,
Nothing in this code that says you have to maintain this house as is. Correct?
Mike, that the question is
So-
directed.
Yeah, I mean, there is provisions in the code relating to existing buildings. So
It's a new building, so I build a brand new house,
mhm.
do everything to this thing without the electric panels, because I don't have to. Is there anything in that code that says I can or can't put in a wood stove or a gas stove or anything afterwards?
And can you
I would defer to your building official. The building inspector believes you have to pull a permit to get something, then it would be.
I know you gotta pull a permit, but does this code stop you from doing that?
So anything after the final certificate of occupancy on the new dwelling unit and the new construction is outside of the purview of the energy code.
So
So that's
you
a
could-
loophole.
it's a
Well, you'd have to put a
major,
chimney in.
it's a major loophole
Yeah.
that just kind of undermines the whole.
Well, likely people would,
And do these
don't have a chimney.
houses have to be a certain size?
how you can have a wood stove without?
I don't think the
Like
stretch
outside,
code
you know, it's cheap.
or specialized code dictate anything about, I mean, the specialized code, it does.
So it isn't size determinant? No.
No, I mean, it's the one size, Mike, if you would go back. The one size determinant would be, so this,
Under 4,000.
yeah, under 4,000 square feet, you need to have a minimum of 4 kilowatts of solar.
Okay,
And over 4,000 square feet, you need to have solar sized to make the house net zero.
okay,
Yeah, that's the one size difference we have.
And then you gotta put a gas stove in that.
yeah.
I'm sorry, but
I think, but I would just say one thing. On my house, for example, I just got rebates. I installed heat pumps
Okay,
because I have a personal goal, which is consistent with the state goal of getting off of fossil fuels. As part of getting my rebate, I had to promise that I would not use my propane system except in a case of emergency. So that's, I mean, that it's an honor systems. No one's going to come and say, I'm not wired to the state. And they're going to say, oh, I saw that you used propane 3 times this month or whatever. I mean, I think there's a good faith feeling that the people of Stockbridge voted last year that we want to do our part in getting off of fossil fuels because of the impacts those have on the environment. And then the state has a program that dovetails with this, which has some requirements and some benefits. And just like with the Green Communities Program, when we passed that, we were early. We were relatively early in doing that. And as such, we've been able to over $250,000 in grants to weatherize all our town buildings and do all of those things. This is a climate leader program. So, and in that first one, we passed the stretch code, and there was some grumbling about that because it was new. Now it's the code. So we did it a little bit early. What I would say, and I can't speak for the state, but this is coming down the pike. All it's really saying is we're going to do this a little bit early. Well, it is.
we don't know what the policy.
We don't know,
changes
but
that
the
are coming
stretch
up
code, what?
down there. We don't know any policy changes that may be coming up.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Policy changes that are gonna come up in the next year or two. We don't know any of that.
Right, okay,
I'm just saying this is.
okay, but yeah.
On this slide here,
Yeah.
is that per unit for the multifamily?
Mike, can you join it? We got the incentives slide up.
Yeah, so I think that is per unit.
Okay, that's what I figured. So basically, they only give you the per unit if you use prevailing wage. That seems strange on the but I guess I understand. But, you know,
Okay, so this is showing the solar incentives that are available. Single family or a small multifamily, 2 to 4 units. And without going into details, just this is, part of the reason why the all electric house is the most cost effective.
Right.
Yeah.
And is there any news on those federal credits and whether they're paused with so much other stuff yet?
So the tax breaks, the tax credits, what I've heard, I'm not a lawyer. It's hard to predict things, going forward, but they're in the tax law, like any other tax credit.
Okay.
And so it's
So it's
not
hard for
something.
them to pause them.
Yes, it's hard for them to pull. Yeah. Next slide. Oh, yes. Okay, so that's residential. Now, this one's, I could go to multifamily and then I have another slide on commercial. I'm not sure if you guys are interested in seeing that. Yeah, Mike, I'm just gonna, yeah, if you go to this, real, if you look, you're gonna see kind of the same thing. They narrow down the different pathways you can get there, but if it's all electric, specialized code doesn't touch it. In commercial, you can see that same thing here. And there's a requirement for wiring for electrification, and there's a requirement to put solar on. So it's similar for multifamily and for commercial.
So
But
schools,
I'm looking at it rather simplistically right now.
schools, when is there a date that they want schools to have all electric?
Well, would be when if you would, right now, they're working under the stretch code.
Okay,
So the darker blue right there. And if you adopt the specialized code, then it'll be when the date that you will label an activation date. We request that it's either in July or December. So that.
July or December?
Yeah, just so
This year?
you could push it out a little bit. If you push it out too much, you won't look. You won't
Like an energy leader?
Exactly. Okay,
Okay.
we go forward. No, not this one. Okay, so we do have a number of slides in here that are part of your handout that shows a comparison of the stretch code to the specialized code. So this is for a large family that's all electric. And you can see, because it has no effect, the cost there is no change in cost
Okay.
for all electric. Okay, Mike, go ahead. That's kind of the details on how they got there. A large single family, you can see if you look at the net, the cost does, as you were pointing out, the solar is going to cost something. The pre-wiring is going to cost something. And yet the solar is going to give you a payback. So your annual energy bill savings is on the positive side. So you will pay back that extra cost over time. But building, large single family gas, because of the PV and the pre-wiring requirement, that will raise the cost of the building.
So the payback looks like it's over, and this is for 4,000 square foot or higher?
Large, yes.
All right, so
Big house.
basically it's extra, the payback is over 12 years or 11
12
years.
years?
Not on a 4,000 square foot house. What is it for a smaller house?
Yeah, $500 a foot, that's a $2 million house anyway. Yeah, okay.
Okay. And this is just one snapshot of the house. They basically are giving you examples. And the next one. So here's your small, single family electric. Again, all electric, there's no change.
So this is more modest, like a normal house.
Right, this is more what you would consider a normal house, right? So again, it's a higher, maybe a little under $10,000 net extra cost. Did I get that right? And then energy bills.
And it doesn't have a page number.
Right.
So they're
It's the
saying,
2,000 square,
2,100 square foot.
21, sorry.
Right, if you look at these, there's a lot of footnotes that really describe exactly what information they were using to get to this. And I believe Mike was actually involved in running these numbers.
Yep, that's correct.
Then there's this one,
So if you have any questions, Mike could.
this is the 21.
And that's it. That's all I got.
Good. Do we need a vote on this or what do we do?
I think we have to decide if we want to bring it
To town meeting.
town meeting.
Yeah. I think we'd let the town decide personally about it. Yeah. With the green, and personally, I thank you for all the work you guys have
Does it
done.
just go on the warrant?
And go on the warrant for town meeting to accept the specialized code.
Yeah.
And would the green committee give any kind of information or?
To the moderator.
I think the Green Committee will decide that to get
So to
something.
decide that, hopefully we can have Chris present or Mike present to be able to answer questions. And I think that, I'm hoping that
You gonna vote for it?
anyway, I'm optimistic. actually.
Yeah,
The town
yeah.
will support it.
So you could have someone
No.
zoom in to a town meeting?
I don't know.
Too much. Yeah.
not around
I think
Answers.
we can.
Right, so it would have to be in person.
So
Did we
what
have-
can, so we're gonna end up being all electric. And with no backup and no whatever, and we have no control over the cost of electricity.
We have no control over the cost of gas.
No, but at least you have options of, when you have a house with options to it. So a new house is pretty much limited. When you put the heat pumps in, what do you got in your basement? For heat?
So I will say when, actually,
Depends where your thermal envelope is. I mean, your basements are mostly heated right now with waste heat.
Yeah, so you going up, if you go all
Electric,
your,
you're getting rid of the waste heat generally.
so you have no heat.
Except
I mean,
for
we've been
your-
having issues of freeze up in basements because who's gonna spend that money and put a heat pump in the basement?
Right. Well, you could put it, you insulate your pipes and everything and you can do it, it's an unfinished basement. I mean, theoretically, an unfinished basement is going to be way colder than your house if you.
Yeah, but you have your heating unit down there that keeps it above.
I have a highly efficient propane heater and I don't think
I'm
that
just-
it doesn't produce waste heat.
I do want to note here in this conversation, because you have to be really careful about this. What you're talking about here is an existing house.
Exactly.
Not a new house.
A new house. I mean, the construction, the comfort, this is just a little personal anecdote. My dad spent some time socializing in someone's really well-built new house. And he came out of there and he kept saying, I can't believe how comfortable it was. It's just no drafts, nice temperature. Just, it's a very, very comfortable place to live and it maintains its temperature. So, you're talking about worried about pipes freezing. It's not going to happen.
I have one other question.
Just say.
Oh, I mean,
No, I understand.
Good for-
I just want to say one thing, because I agree with you that there are a lot of moving parts. There are just
I
a
think
lot of moving parts.
way too many
There's the
on it.
grid, there's how fast it can be cleaned. Maybe clean is a better word than green, because that's what we're talking about, is cleaning up our grid by not using fossil fuels. And there's the rate structure, which is probably going to change as well because of what you're saying. There's a lot, there's the issue of solar and siting of solar in Western Mass. They're all
but to
real.
me, I think we're kind of almost working backwards.
Uh-huh.
We are making these houses and stuff 100% electric. And everything down the line is falling apart.
Right.
We
But
should be working on, my opinion is, how much electricity we're going to need to do this. The first step is, how do you produce it? Where do you produce it? How do you make enough electricity to handle all this? How do you transmit the electricity? Are we going to be cutting, like in Lanesboro, 100-foot path through the woods to get electricity from here to Boston or from here to any place? Those are questions that I think we should be working from. How do you make it? How do you distribute your, and then put it to your housing?
Here's one thing about that. I mean, it's just that a house lasts 50, 100, 200 years. So we can't just wait for everything else to happen before we build a new house. There has to be, nothing, it's not going to be,
What happens?
it's not going to be perfect. And technology is changing.
I
Like
know.
right now, I just saw a new thing where the electric cars are going to be able to also be like storage and go back and feed into the grid when we're not using them. So there's a lot, just like they used to have radio controlled hot water heaters. There's new technology that can take advantage of the electrification and feed it back into the grid without having to, and putting up rooftop solar. I mean, I just think I'm more optimistic.
I know you are. I'm just,
And I also believe we have to be at the table for these deciding decisions. I totally
yeah,
support
I don't
that.
want to end up
I know,
And all our open space out here, is solar farms.
I agree with you.
And massive wires running down east,
Right.
because I'm afraid of that.
I understand, yeah.
And, you know, and it's,
We're all in this, we're all in that part, in that together.
That's true.
I have actually a very practical question that's specific to Stockbridge. In the last 12 months, I've sat through not one, but two meetings with large entertainment-oriented nonprofits, both of whom have asked about a pathway to build housing that would be seasonal, like bungalows, basically like what we used to build in the 40s, which is 2-season or 3-season cottages. They don't need housing in the winter. They need it when their artists are here in the summer. Big nonprofits. And I'm wondering, like, how does this impact people who don't need to heat their home?
Mike, do you have an answer? Yeah.
Because we're not talking about 1 or 2 units or 5 units a year. We're talking about, and these are real meetings I've actually attended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have
So
fire.
probably depends on how the house is, how that building is.
They burn wood right now, sorry. I'm listening, Mike, sorry.
They also might want AC,
Yeah.
which is the heat
Um,
pumps.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, and typically like a heat pump system will be able to provide both heat and cool. So
We
I
have those.
think
Okay.
it does have that benefit of being able to provide both like work support in both the summer and the winter.
I'm sure you can
Because I
still
have
build the
those in
stretch
my
code and
house.
everything else.
Yeah,
And how is this going to affect affordable housing units?
it might be affordable.
It might, it's the cheap.
Not subsidized.
It's expensive. It's the
Yeah.
least expensive.
Yeah,
And
look
we
at
have a
it.
heat pump and it is efficient.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think your point is great. Of course, at this rate, we have to follow the scratch card anyway, so it's de minimis. It's just too bad, because, we live in a town where you go back 80 years and over half the residences were 2-3-season cottages that were put up for a song, and people would come for 2 months of the summer, and I guess those days were long gone, but yeah, I understand why.
And I would just go back to, since I've been working on this, every year when we talk about new construction residential, there've been from 4 to 6 homes built. I mean, this is not affecting anyone who's living in a house now.
Yeah.
And it's really saying for a new house that's going to be lasting 50 years, do we want to make sure that we're doing our part to reduce its reliance on fossil fuels?
And just out of curiosity, and this is once again, we have a big camp here. For somebody doing camp where there's no AC, does this sort of force people into a whole different cost structure if they're, I mean, the Berkshires have a ton of camps, for example.
So you're talking about basically uninsulated, I mean, not
Yeah.
But I don't think
unheated,
this fits.
Yeah,
non-conditioned space.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it fits to this.
yeah.
I'm just curious. There's more academic.
But
than-
should we,
Yeah, this is new construction, Patrick.
so should we make a
About
vote?
new construction,
But we just had a fire at the camp,
picture lean-to.
I mean, we did that last year. We had a fire there. I was just curious.
It's under,
Good answer.
it's unconditioned space, so I'm not sure how that would be.
Okay.
Right.
So should we take a vote to put this on the warrant or not?
Yeah, I make a motion, we add it to the warrant.
A second? I'll second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Let the town decide, Chuck.
I like the town side, but my personal vote is no.
That's okay. It doesn't have to be.
But you two are, let's
Yeah,
go with
all right.
that. I think it's told me how to answer a question.
Thanks for coming in.
But,
You're welcome.
Right, but it could be a 2 vote, not it doesn't. have to
no,
be
it's
a 3
fine.
vote.
It's,
Yeah,
I got no issue with going with the town. I just want
Can we do a
my
2-minute
opinion.
recess? I need to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Quickly.
Well, I'll do this quickly.
Yeah, my basketball game's
do I have
on.
to say
Basketball game's on.
I'd just like to pause the meeting for a minute and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. Did anyone have a question? And if they do, and we can't answer it, you may contact the Green Committee and Laura Dubester. So the next is the draft ADU zoning bylaw. Who is presenting it?
No one's presenting it. It's been sent from the planning board.
So we don't have
the
to do a
select board.
presentation?
This is just part of the process. It goes to, so anytime you have a draft bylaw, the draft
Okay.
bylaw gets referred to the select board. The planning board must hold a public hearing. And then it comes back to the select board to see if it gets placed on.
All right.
So at this point,
So
we're
at-
referring it.
So we're going to refer this to the planning board for a public hearing. Do we need a vote?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion
Well,
that,
here, can we
Yes, I
discuss
thought about it.
first?
Yeah.
Just for a second?
What do we need to discuss?
I have your guidance, actually.
yeah, what?
I want your guidance because this is a board decision. I find that there's a number of things in this law that are either duplicative of the state requirement or actually not necessarily family friendly. And I'll give you an example. Right now, we have a prohibition in our short-term rental bylaw of professionally managed units, which means that nobody can rent 2 units at once if they're not a resident of the town. So this idea that we would need to ban one of the 2 units from being a short-term rental would, in this case, the ADU, it would help someone like me who's single, living in his house alone. And I could move into the ADU and rent my house out as a short-term rental, but it would hurt a family of 5 who couldn't fit in their ADU and rent their house out. So right now, the way this is structured is banning the ADUs from being short-term rentals, but it's not banning the regular units. And there's maybe some number of reasons not to do that anyway. And we already ban 2 or more units anyway from the same owner. So we don't need to necessarily change that. And I guess the question I have for you is this. I think that we could do a much more simple repeal of the current ADU bylaw, which is now moved with this, and not really get into something that is so restrictive in terms of the ADUs not being able to run as short-term rentals. Because right now, basically, nobody's talking about banning the main house from being a short-term rental, but they're talking about banning the ADU from being a short-term rental. And for somebody who doesn't need all the space of the main house, it benefits them. And for family that does need the space, it hurts them. And I'm happy to do the work, but if you guys want me to work on an alternative, I'd be happy to draft it, but I don't want to bother if you guys aren't going to consider it.
So.
I guess I'm lost because I think we have to send it to planning board. Aren't you supposed to get asked this question to the planning board?
I did.
Right, but because to my understanding, we have to send it to them to have a public hearing.
Right, but we also
And
have
then
to
they can do the
quickly, if we're going to do
adjustment.
something separate, we're running out of time.
Quickly isn't always, sometimes we don't have time to think about things and then we get into a bit of a dilly. So I think,
Yeah, but
I don't know, I feel like we should still send it.
I would rather not do this one now and actually think about it more. I think we have an enforcement issue. There's a lot of problems, I think, that with this bylaw around right now.
Why do you not think the planning board can't handle it?
I think that frankly, it was done one meeting with no public participation. And frankly, most bylaws that are presented by one of our town boards pass a town meeting. That's just the reality of how it works. And I'm suggesting to you that we have some other options we might want to consider here, because the problem that we're trying to solve here, we don't have, because we prohibit professionally managed units. You can't rent 2 units at once. And there's many other problems with this. Patty's excellent. Patty Kaya is on this call, and she had made a number of points that I should agree with, earlier in her memo to us. And I think that we should,
But if we send it to the planning board, there's a public hearing. We're not having a public hearing.
So if you send this to the planning board,
Yeah.
goes to public hearing. At that hearing, you can state your case, right? And Patty, whatever, can state whatever they want.
Right.
Then it comes back to us. They either redesign the stuff, come back to us.
And then it comes back just for us to
We
find.
decide it goes on or not. If you don't like it, we don't put it on.
Is that true?
Yes.
No,
No?
Why is
goes
that?
back
not
to
true?
you guys to be placed on warrant within, or call a town meeting within 6 months. So you also don't have to.
But I
So
thought
we-
we could adjust
We
it.
don't have any flexibility not to bring it to town meetings. That was my
Right.
understanding, yeah.
Right, within 6 months, you must bring it to a town meeting.
So I'm not quite following I know you're saying only one could be rented as short-term rental?
How long do we have to
Like-
refer it back?
So just in case I did call.
Are you looking
so,
it up?
Yes, you must within 14 days refer it to the planning board. Within 65 days of submittal to the planning board, they must hold a public hearing. Once they have to publicize 14 days prior, there's publication requirements, but it's
So
65 days.
when does that bring it to, that 65 days?
Well, they can do it sooner.
Yeah, but what's,
65 days is just they have within 65 days to
Yeah.
bring it. Then it goes to town meeting after either 21 days have lapsed between the hearing. And, there has to be at least 21 days between
gotta
the
do it.
hearing and a town meeting. So
So you
you
gotta-
can't, so if we back out,
they gotta do it 21 days before our May meeting.
right, so it would have to come back to you guys, be placed on the warrant for town meeting. It's gonna be the 19th. So it'd have to be submitted by April 28th.
Here's what we're setting ourselves up for.
And it's
We're,
March 6th.
They have the time to do it.
you know, we tried the last 2 years to enforce a short-term rental bylaw with Granicus. It failed. It wasn't just here. The ones, other towns around us that used GoGov, it also failed. We wasted what, Michael, 10 grand
Yeah.
on Granicus? All right. So now we're going to basically pass a new bylaw, which is basically a short-term rental bylaw, you know, that mostly bans people from doing a short-term rental there, which mostly benefits the scofflaws who don't follow our bylaws, of which it's 90% now didn't register for short-term rental. Beyond that, we already have banned for people from offering two at once. And beyond that, you know, I think we've got, you know, Michael has a plan if we want to enforce short-term rental laws, which is with the 5-town building department, we would need to add a dedicated employee. And I calculate that would add about $20,000 a year. And you would do it with, what's that?
It's a concept, obviously.
It's not a plan. I'm not saying you're endorsing the plan. In fact, we've already talked about this.
No, I'm
But-
just saying the concept.
But my point is that if this is important to the town and we want to come up with a plan to actually enforce these laws that we're passing, I think we should come up with a plan of how we're going to enforce it before we start putting bylaws on the books that we've already shown are really hard to enforce. You know, so I don't know. I feel like,
It hasn't even gone to any board to talk about.
yeah, it was like here, well, it was on the planning board agenda already. They voted it out.
Right, so you have a zoning that's been referred to you to be referred back for a public hearing. That's the part, and the law is very clear that this is just part of the process and that you must submit it to the planning board for a public hearing within 14 days of receipt. Then they will hold the hearing and then they will come back after the meeting with either comments or at least 21 days.
We can make our case at town meeting too, obviously. So there's a lot of opportunities for, you know, the public to be educated here. I just feel like, you know, I don't like passing laws we don't have a plan to enforce.
Me either.
But they haven't, it's not a done deal, right? They
Oh, that's right.
could change it, they could. Or we could not put it on, right?
Right, but once we send this back and they revise it and send it to us and we still don't like it, what's our options?
Nothing.
Nothing. What they do is the planning board submits written and oral reports with recommendations about what to do with it back to you guys. And then within 21 days or after that, it goes to the town meeting for a vote. I'm not seeing anywhere in the guidance document that you can withdraw it at this point and move through the process. But the planning board could actually end up coming back and not recommending that it pass.
Right. And what we could do,
Then I'll find
Because
out.
they could just say, it doesn't work.
what we could do is we can bring two competing proposals to town meeting. And that's why I'm asking you, do you want us to come up with our own kind of thing that is scaled back? And
But
that
that's
doesn't-
separate than this, isn't
Right,
it?
but we'll run out of time if we don't get started right away. That's my point.
Right, but we could,
We just propose, for example, repealing the
Next
current
meeting.
short-term rental bylaw. I'm sorry, the current ADU bylaw that's on the books. We just repeal it. It's now no longer relevant. That could be our counter proposal.
right, but we don't have to do that tonight because it's only March. Don't we have until April 20?
Well, I would assume that I would try to put something together for the next meeting.
Right.
And even then, would we have enough time, Michael? If we did March 20th.
It's the next
65 days.
meeting.
20th, 14 days to referral, 65 days to the hearing.
They could
The
kill.
planning board has to have the hearing, and then whether or not it goes to this town meeting or not, then it will come back to you guys. And if it's after the town meeting, then you would have to call another town meeting within 6 months in order to do it. So, yeah, you're sort of in a crunch here.
But we
I guess
just
But I think you
received
have
this.
one in front of
But
you.
I
It's
just
never
got
had a
this
hearing.
tonight.
It's never had a hearing. Well, you guys are only referring at this point.
It wasn't a hearing, but there was a public meeting to
No,
discuss this.
you're sending it, as part of the process, you're sending.
I know, I
it out,
understand the
Have
process.
a hearing. That's where you guys go.
Right.
Other than referring it, there's no other action
All right.
this board can take at this point.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay, so I need a motion to send it to planning board
For a public hearing.
for public hearing, please.
Oh, second.
No, I need a motion.
I thought you just made the motion.
I can't make a motion.
You can.
Oh, then I'll make a motion. We refer this to the planning board for a public hearing.
I'll second your motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Patrick, yeah, you're
Just
no.
one.
Well, and then you can work on,
What?
and we can still have you work on.
You can still put something forward. You have time.
All right,
And then we'll look at that.
I would protest.
Oh, it's,
All right. So done. Next is capital and operational fiscal year 2026 budget update.
Do you want to ask the public if they want to make any comments on the AV bylaw? Because they
I
did
don't
submit
see a
some.
hand. Anyone have a question?
if we get asked. But nobody's here.
They're all eating dinner or watching television. All right. Mike, are you starting?
Yeah, so I'll pull up on the screen. Screen share. I just want to show you what's gonna be, I'm gonna come around the. So, the finance, committee reached out to me and about beginning to do the joint meetings that we typically do for different departments. They'd like to do Thursday, March 27th. Patrick, are you good with that date? I know the other two I mentioned before the meeting.
It's a Thursday
Yeah,
and you said 6:30 or 6.
we're gonna do it at 6 first with the fire department presentation, which you guys have already heard. And then at 6:30, we're gonna discuss OPEB. And then also I was curious if this board had, in their review, had any other departments that they wanted to bring forward at this point. Right now, it's just the OPEB discussion and the fire department EMS.
So we have the community power group meeting on the 13th.
Yeah.
We have another select board meeting on the 20th, and you want to do the joint meeting on the 27th.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, we have so many issues with the school, with what's going on with the school vote this year. I was really trying to kind of not have every Thursday and,
What's on Thursday?
they meet on Thursday, they're meeting
they
right now
do.
upstairs. And once again, we don't, the chair in Great Barrington is on the school committee, the chair in West Stockbridge is on the school committee. And this board doesn't have any representative voice going to the school committee meetings. And I would just prefer we meet any day other than the week, other than Thursdays. So it's up to you. I'll do this one if you want, but this is why I kind
Well,
of,
do you want
this is
to
a
go-
huge
But
issue
don't
this
we
year.
have Stockbridge people on the school committee?
We don't have it's the budget issues are a function of this. We raise and appropriate. They submit to us, and being informed on that, especially with the new school proposal, is I think really important. This is why I want to attend. I'm a volunteer. What can I say? I got no life.
Can you check with
Patrick, what
finance?
day would be good for you?
Wednesday, any day other than Thursdays. In fact, in general, I would rather.
Wednesday's fine with me.
all right, I'll ask with the 26th.
Wednesdays are good.
I don't even know if they have a meeting on that Thursday, but I'm just saying that, we've got.
That's the first thing you find out, see if they have a meeting.
All right, I'll check.
If not, we'll do it the 27th.
All right.
Right now, I'm free. It's just,
And I'm free the 26th.
I could do the
I
26th.
can have much of a life right now. I'm free the whole week, except for 28th, it might be late.
So
If we for either of them, so if we do.
20th
that'd be
is
great.
select-
I'll check with the school to find out if they have a meeting at night.
Yeah, okay.
And then,
Are we done?
Tentatively scheduled for the 27th and otherwise.
Or the
unless otherwise,
26th.
got it. I'll be in touch with everybody. I will follow up on that.
then we can announce a meeting on the 20th.
And would the 26th be the same time, 6?
Mhm. Okay,
Patrick, would that work for you?
26 works fine for me, yeah.
If the school doesn't have
If they don't have a meeting on the
27th.
27th.
And do you think that we'll have the update on the third quarter numbers by then?
I'm hoping they're gonna come in by March 5th, so I was gonna go over that as part of this and talk about
Okay.
that.
Because it would be really great if that was, that I think should really inform some of the other questions that we have.
So just to let you guys know, so this is the note page when I'm gonna be sending this around tomorrow to you guys with the updated data sheet. So you'll notice that there's one tab that says
What
notes.
page?
So as I
We don't
make,
have this.
and you don't see it in your book.
Oh, I
the
don't.
note sheet,
Okay.
But on the electronic version I send you, you'll see a note sheet and it basically letters all the changes as
You
they
pull the
go.
text up so we can see the most important column.
Yeah. So what it does is it basically, as I,
Cheaters don't work that far.
Does that say, oh, I thought it said chickens.
It doesn't.
so as I make changes to the budget on the note tab, I just put what changes I've made. So therefore you guys can refer to those pages. I have what was changed, what was in budget number 1, why it was changed, and then which tabs were affected by it.
All right.
So you can go right to the tab and see where changes were made. So since we met, there was some discussion over I added a data sheet for FY25 rent. Added a data sheet for meals and rooms tax, which we're gonna go over in a moment. We were able to adjust the tri-town budget down because of a change in the fringe benefit number from Lee. So I made that change. Under the tree warden, I did talk to Ken Goach, who's done a lot of work up at the Ice Glen. He said that we should be basically budgeting every year for the ash borer treatment up in the Glen. So I added that instead of as a capital item into the operating budget. It's going to be a yearly cost that we're going to be incurring. Animal control, there was a mistake in the spreadsheet, so I did fix that mistake. And then I adjusted the field for meals and room tax. So the biggest.
That's temporary based on, we have a theory that the numbers that they're remitting at a different rate than they did in the past. So we'll know that.
So what I want to show you on that one, let me blow this up. This is probably the biggest thing that right now is moving the budget. So right now we're at 3.9% increase in the budget. And it was, if you remember, it was down toward 3. One of the things that was noted was that if you look at 2024, the first quarter bill, we took in for the room 205 and we brought in 21,000 in meals. This year we brought in 159 and 15. Those are a 78% and 74% adjustment from the year before. 45,000 less in the room tax and 5,600 in the meals tax.
Right.
But you notice that our next one that comes in September through November was right on 100 and 101%. So hot meals were slightly up and so was the room tax by 200. So I changed the budget sheet on that page just because I don't know. Once the meal tax come in, what I'm going to be looking for is in the third quarter, do we go right back to where it was? Because what could have happened is this could have just been a timing when taxes came in, because the first quarter is the first tax from the first tax bill for last year. Was there a little tweak there? Was there something? If it bounces right back to 100%, then I'm going to restore our anticipated one. If we, for some reason, see a downward trend, then I'm going to build off of that to estimate our returns for the meals tax.
Now, Along those lines, so as you know, I checked in to do a reality check with our largest hotel and restaurant provider in town, and they indicated they had a record year last year. If the numbers don't bounce back, where there's such a huge percentage, and I'm not suggesting anything untoward, I'm just saying that there may be some administrative issue here that something got screwed up because
Right.
none of our data is suggesting we should take this kind of hit.
Right.
And even our partners on down the street are saying, no, we had the best year ever. So I don't know what to do.
Well, I was told that though, in the first quarter of the year, which is June through September, August, they had 20 rooms with water damage at the Red Lion Inn that were unavailable for rental.
Yeah.
So while their overall year might be good, could
The
that have
first
been
quarter.
a cause?
I mean, even now they've got 25 closed rooms. We have 125 total rooms, 25 aren't
I
open.
don't know, right, I'm
Yeah.
just,
I think that
let's-
they're,
I think before we panic or anything, let's see what the next quarter brings in. If everything's back to where it is, then I'm comfortable going back. If not, right, we're gonna have to dig deeper and try to figure out, right, is there something wrong?
by the way, I might have been talking about Diane's B&B, I didn't indicate who the,
No, that's fine.
I'm
Question for you.
not indicating who it is.
Off this topic. Are you done with this topic?
Sure, if you don't have any
No.
questions about this topic,
No.
Just gotta wait
but I
to see
think
what
it's
the number-
something that's gonna,
Yeah, we
it's
have to wait
gonna
to see
swing,
the
it's gonna
numbers.
swing this number, could swing this number good. Because when I use 90% of this, if I go back to the revenue page,
You won't know until the numbers come in, correct?
Yeah,
right? If I go
So I
back to
think
the
we should
revenue
wait.
page,
Figure it out, you're
we
right.
have
Yeah.
time. We need the real numbers.
yeah, we're gonna end up like 100 and, we're gonna end up,
Because I don't want to have a long conversation about numbers that aren't.
Yeah, until we get the
Right.
numbers.
that's what I would say is right, not waste the time on.
So what's your question?
Just a quick question. You're with the ice climb thing. Is that tree treatment working?
Yeah, no, we didn't lose a single ash.
Okay.
We had one guy hit by lightning and so it came down. 50 ashes. Ash borer kills them really quick.
Yeah,
We inject this stuff in them and it's like chemo.
Okay.
It kills the bugs immediately and you can't find a single ash stand around here that's still alive.
No.
And we have 50, 400-year-old ones that we haven't lost a single one. It's hugely
And
successful.
and the pines are good.
The hemlocks are doing good. The ones that were too far didn't come back.
Oh.
The ones that weren't too far, we were able to save.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because my point was if it wasn't
And
working, I wasn't going to
Oh,
throw
yeah, yeah.
money up.
Did that
No, no, no,
hemlocks
no.
get?
We haven't lost a single one.
Well,
Do the
good.
hemlocks get treated also?
Yeah, but every 2 or 3 years.
Hemlocks are,
Oh.
right, they're,
Okay.
they're not an annual treatment.
And that's lucky because that's the dinotefuran injection, which is much more
If this
expensive.
was-
Yeah.
Yeah.
If this wasn't
10
working,
times.
then
Yeah.
I would reconsider the financing. But it's working, we gotta save
Yeah.
them, I'm 100% behind. it.
And can we
Okay.
put that into the
Just follow
tree
it up on my-
warden's budget?
My
No,
problem.
if you're finished my
So what
movie
I-
really quick. We're making a
Remember
movie.
we talked about fixing some of the Main
Oh, you're
Street
making a
trees?
movie.
So what I did is I did drop, as you can see here, I have it aligned for Ice Glen, $9,000.
Okay,
Yeah, these are tough to see on the screen.
that's okay.
And the other thing is I've talked to
But did
Matt.
we give him money to work on the Main Street trees?
Yes, we increased the,
Okay,
to 10,000, that includes, so you see that now it's 71,000 and last year was 53.
Yeah.
So we're
Okay.
significantly upping, but we're taking care of Ice Glen. We're creating a maintenance plan for the Main Street trees.
good, okay.
And then we have our usual budget for removing dangerous trees throughout the town.
And
Okay.
remember,
Which can add up to a lot of money if you go through every one of them.
remember 3 years ago, we applied for a USDA suppression grant for 70 grand for Ice Glen and we got it. And Matt Boudreau and I have talked about reapplying for that, and Michael too. So I know those grants are cumbersome because they're federal grants, but
how
the great thing about having the 71,000 there is that if we do get a suppression grant to do Ice Glen, that money can go toward, the Main Street if we need to, or just we won't spend it.
But how often can you apply for that kind of grant?
Well, we don't have to apply this year because there's no treatment this year. We finished
Right,
our
but
treatment
can you-
last spring, so it's gonna be in a couple of years.
Okay,
So we'll apply again.
Yeah.
all right.
But we
We'll
got,
out our other one and we'll apply again for the
Okay.
next. Yep.
I'm glad it's working.
The other thing I did is I went through as far as meetings and travel and
Oh.
consolidated them into the selectmen's line, and I'll come up with a policy for handling
Mhm.
both that dues and subscriptions and office supplies, We just basically went to centralization.
How much did that save versus the first draft of the budget?
So
Or did it just
I
get
took
mushed?
about a third off of it. So, right now it's,
It's still not enough for a party.
15,000 and a little over 5,000. Yes.
Sorry,
And-
Patrick.
What did you say?
I said it wasn't enough for the party, sorry.
I think we got another 10 off. They can use pencil.
One thing that I am keeping an eye on is I know we talked about dropping the litigation line from 25 to 18.
Ooh,
But if we got two things. We have a special permit application. We're not sure where that's going to go in the near future. And we have still the Housatonic, which is a
Okay,
separate
leave
one.
it.
I'm wondering if
Yeah.
maybe, and we can keep an eye on this. Let's see where we're at. But we might want to leave that at 25. I did speak with legal, retainers staying the same. They recommended that we leave it at 25. So I just think I have it as
They're recommending they up their own budget.
Well, the one that's guaranteed pays to a retainer, the litigation, which as you can see up there, actually,
My surprise.
5 years ago was 100,000. We trimmed that down to 25.
We're doing great.
So we only use that if we get in trouble.
Having fun and not getting sued. Yay.
Yes.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. So overall, there hasn't been a lot of changes from the first budget, but there are just some concerns that we need to address.
oh, I have to make a note.
Can I ask you one big thing that,
Yep.
and I'm going to fully disclose that this was, and because I know he's talked to you too, is a concern around brokers, around maintenance of this building. Do you
Oh,
want?
I already told Mike about it, but go ahead.
What?
So,
Remember the back wall, the chipping, like that cementy stuff?
yeah.
I had told Mike a while back.
Yeah, but we didn't fund it. And I just want, it's not just that, you've got, you know,
But we're doing the roof.
you've got no drainage around the baseboard. You've got issues with the cupola. Is that in the roof budget for here?
I've got the shingles doing this, then next year I'm also gonna be doing, I need to figure out I've reached out to the company that did the original design of this building about having them come up and do a thorough evaluation of this building.
Original design, like 150 years.
17 years ago, when it became a school or town hall.
You get it right.
No, not. Sorry.
Back when they had those boilers.
So some of it,
Right.
so some of this, we have to come up with some of the plan around.
Okay.
Coming up with a comprehensive plan and then checking off the things. The one thing we do need to do is the replacement of some of the shingles up there. I already had it.
I get it. No, I know. I'm just saying, is it big enough? I just want to ask questions and do we need any money for engineering to figure out what we're going to need to do here?
I think we're in good shape because the current engineering budget is still in good shape. For
Okay.
this year, we have about
Okay.
50. I still have
Okay.
20 something. Good to keep an eye on it.
I feel like we've done a good job maintaining things and I just want to kind of keep up the focus
Yeah.
on, you
And
know.
what about our heating system?
Here,
That's something we gotta replace, or is that something we gotta
here we're in great shape.
back up?
If you remember, well, we have brand new, our gas boilers downstairs.
No, we need all these units.
Well, we do have an issue with these units.
No,
So,
we do.
Can we
yeah.
put windmills on the roof?
so I did end up using, ARPA funds to replace some of them
Okay.
before because we had to get it done. So just so people are aware, these units in here were designed as heat pump units. They were supposed to take the geothermal that comes up at about 67 degrees. They're supposed to create the heat. What we do in our basement is when the geothermal came out, we have natural gas boilers. They heat the water to 67 degrees and then send it through. Basically, the system thinks it's on geothermal, but it's not. It's running off of, so it's sort of but we have 144 of these units. We're coming up with a plan. If we get the climate leader, did you notice that heat pumps is on there? for
Yeah.
Municipal buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I'm gonna do is if we do pass that and we get a roadmap in
Big
place,
grant.
I was gonna go for the $150,000
Oh,
grant
engineering.
to address the heat pumps in this building and possibly get up to $1 million toward
Good.
bringing
That's a
that
good
up to
idea.
code. It was brought up that they would like us they might ask us to consider getting off the gas onto a geothermal again.
Okay. Are they more modern now and work better?
So the new, when we did our wells, ours were an open source. And my understanding is they pretty much have moved away from open source wells because they would draw sand and other stuff into them. They're now all closed loop systems.
This is for geothermal?
Geothermal. I would think that because our gas boilers are running at 98% efficiency, they only heat the water to 67 degrees. And they're pretty much 10 years old because the geothermal was in here for a while until it was replaced. I would think that maybe we wouldn't have to replace that yet, but when it goes to fail, I think then
Yeah, we have to be ready. Okay, good.
Yeah, it's way down the road.
All right, so our next meeting.
Oh, I was gonna-
We're not done.
One more?
Just go over the changes that I made to the.
Exempt?
Well, the only one is at the top, so the only thing that I've changed here is I had to adjust, there was a mix-up calculation. Right now, based on all the spending, there was a line that wasn't calculating correct, it was at 34, and I didn't realize that the formula had been wiped out at one point, so I redid the formula. So based on our spending and the rest, once we're done, we'll still have 23% of stabilization and free cash in reserve.
Is that the
The-
green one?
It's right here.
Okay.
Sorry, I know it's, even with that big screen, it's not, so it's
So
23.9. I know the finance committee and select board years ago had said that we would like to have at least 10% free cash, 10% stabilization,
Oh,
roughly
so we have it.
20% in reserves. The other 8 million, well, there is 8 million total reserve. Some of these are lined up in very specific programs such as Chapter 90, which is your roads, your fair share, which is your roads, the cemetery perpetual care, and OPEB.
Okay.
So,
All
Yeah.
right.
so that's where we're at. Nothing, not a lot of big changes since the first
And
initial.
can you go to the cap,
No, I'm not sure.
capital, the tab, I'm getting tired, sorry.
Free cash?
Yeah, no, like yeah, exactly. So we decided not to do the tennis court
Well,
for now?
you guys can place it on there. So just so people know, this is a tennis court at Pinewood, at Pine Street.
The one over,
Yeah, the base is gone. So originally we were gonna top coat it when we did the tennis courts here at Town Hall, about a year and a half ago. Because down there, we realized that it wasn't just an issue. The company that was gonna do the top coat said they wouldn't even warranty it for a single season because the base was so bad. So at that point, I went, wait a second, then we're not gonna spend 25,000 recoating a court that they won't even say will last a year.
I thought we voted we didn't want to do it.
Right, that's why I have it in the not recommended
Okay.
tab, right.
Okay.
What would happen, there's a couple things to consider down there, whether or not you need additional tennis courts. Right now, it seems as though since Monument Mountain put in, it's either 6 or 7 courts there. A lot of the instructors use the courts at Monument Mountain. And our
And
courts
the
here
ones over
are
here.
used, and my understanding originally, Pine Court was developed with tennis courts because during the day, people couldn't use the tennis courts here when it was a school. So,
I don't understand how we do improvements to land we don't own anyway. I mean,
I'm 100% against it.
it seems like it's a
I
really
don't want to do
strange.
it.
I mean, they haven't been used in over a year.
It's the same old town hall problem with the Congregational Church owned it.
Yeah.
From way back when. It's kind of like, how can
We
we?
have really good courts right here at the
Right.
school and then really good
so if we
courts. at-
decided not to, what we would do is we'd remove the tennis courts, put down topsoil, put down, replant grass and turn it back,
Like a park.
that part into the green space. And then we can look at the rest of
We
it.
don't own the
We
land.
do not own.
So why would we even do that?
So whose land
Owns
is
the
it?
land.
Why would we even do that
We
then?
did the improvements to it, I think. Well,
Who owns the land?
Austin Riggs owns the land.
Okay.
They turned it over to the town. At some point, the town requested to use the land for recreational purposes and put in tennis courts, the basketball court and the other. My understanding was from Pete, talking to people who've been here for a long time,
All right.
that it was done to be used at that time. A
It's-
lot of that can be done, Patrick, actually with our own front end
Yes.
loader and
Okay.
The
we're talking minimal costs as far as top.
roughly 20
As
grand,
long as I don't have to drive it.
Yeah.
roughly 20 grand to travel the car and put grass back there.
You know that.
Roughly.
Less?
Yes,
Roughly.
Chuck, with your
Don't hold me to
experience.
it, but it's a lot cheaper than 225,000.
Do we use MassCore for the printing of the annual report?
No, we use, out of Lennox. I didn't think about MassCore as they do printing? Oh,
Lots of them. That's mostly what they do.
yeah.
I don't want to take work away from a local vendor, but.
It's always a question when NASCAR is right.
What?
That's one of the big
I
questions.
know, I know. I'm just saying though, that
Like using
it's a big, pretty big line item and, it's just,
But if
mass
we use
chorus,
local-
mass corrections. They have a big giant printing operation.
But we use someone local?
We do, out of Lennox.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're right on Route 1, I can't remember.
They are accepting quotes for annual reports. We might just get one to see how competitive it is, but
Right.
All right. So our next meeting is.
we're done. think we're done.
Aren't we?
I was just looking up through my old,
That we're just going to the changes that Mike found.
okay.
Did I misunderstand?
No, I mean, the rest of it, none of the rest, nothing else changed from what it was. The only thing, yes, I did put the 215 in the not recommended column, and other than that, there's no other changes to the capital budget at this point.
Michael, there was one change. If we want to repair the war memorial, not just put in the new one, that number's got to go up.
Well, the only number given to me so far is.
Now, at the last meeting, when Rich was here, we talked about how if we're going to actually rearrange the stones and we're going to, there's like missing bronze letters on a lot of the existing memorials.
So do we have,
Yeah.
We estimated that it was another 25 grand to fix those. And he had talked to some bronze company that does it.
I didn't hear a number.
Yeah, okay.
So I know you guys were talking about that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a number. So why don't we place it on the agenda for the 27th when we're meeting with the finance committee to
Okay.
review that number?
Yeah.
I'll reach out to Rich and ask him if he has
All right.
a definitive number to put in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I just feel like if we're gonna kind of,
let's get a real
so
number.
once again, maintenance, those bronze things have been there for decades and decades and decades, and they've gotten busted up a little bit. And
Were there any other that this committee would like to have come to a joint meeting? Right now, we just have the OPEB discussion and the fire EMS proposal. And, we
We're gonna
can
have more.
obviously in April have additional meetings.
We're gonna
We'll have
meet
to
them again,
solidify
right?
by the end of April, so.
I
Right,
think those two would be quite.
they're gonna be long. Those two.
So we'll bring the other stuff out another meeting.
and what are you gonna know with, when does the school budget solidify?
So I'm waiting to get the new number from the school budget because they were supposedly cutting. according
Further,
to-
right.
So I'm just waiting to get that number and then I'll update that number.
I would, depending upon what you guys want, I would like the school committee to come in.
Oh, yeah.
The school superintendent to come in and
Oh,
present to
yeah.
us.
When he's ready,
What?
when he's ready. I don't think it's ready yet, is it?
Yeah, it is.
No, they've already been
Great
like 2 weeks ago. They're gonna do Great Barrington.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
You want me to propose it to the chair of the finance to have him come at that meeting? Or the joint meeting?
I don't mind. Either way, it's up to you.
All right, I'll ask the finance.
In fact, that would be two birds with one stone, so save Peter's time,
All right. So our next meeting is March 20th at 6:30, which is a regular select board meeting. Then we will have an additional select board meeting either March 27th or March 26th. And I also want to announce on March 13th, there's a community aggregation meeting from 6 to 9 PM in the select board room. Again, March 13th is a community aggregation meeting from 6 to 9 PM. Anybody is welcome.
It's the electric.
Electric.
Community electric program, and if you have any questions, I know we've had a lot of calls, people just questioning what it is. And if you want to know more about it, come to that meeting at that time if you have any questions about it. If not, you can still reach out to me. I'll do my best to answer those questions.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.